Mr. Schultz, have there been any cases withdrawn?
Not I'm aware of.
None. No withdrawals.
The ones that have been withdrawn are not on the agenda.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Ethan Collier, and I chair the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission. And there's a couple things I want to go over before we get started. If you've been here for maybe just a few minutes, I think there have been some slides that have been playing, but I want to draw your attention to just how we do today's meeting. So Planning Commission's gotten this packet in the mail within the last couple of weeks, and we've had the opportunity to review it. And so in cases where we have a staff recommendation to approve and we don't have any opposition, it's not at all uncommon for us to take action on the case without hearing the staff presentation. In each case, I'll go through the agenda in its order. Hopefully you have a copy of it there in front of you. And at times we move quickly, so I just encourage you to follow along closely so that you know where we're at on the agenda. In each case, I will ask if there's any opposition present. If you're here and you've got some sort of question in regards to the case, or you've got concerns about it, or you're opposed to the case, in any case, if you're here and you want to speak in regards to the case, make sure to raise your hand when I ask if there's any opposition. Because if you don't raise your hand and I don't see you, then it's possible for Planning Commission to have taken action on a case without having had the opportunity to hear from the public, which is why we're here today. In those cases, we'll hear the staff presentation first. Mr. Schultz will take us through that. And then we'll first hear from the applicant. So if you're the applicant in regards to the case and the staff is presenting it, go ahead and come on up to the mic. After staff gets done, introduce yourself, state your name and address for the record, and then tell the Planning Commission why you want what you're asking for. The applicant will have 7 minutes to present their case. Then they'll take a seat. We'll hear from the opposition. The total time allotted for opposition, irregardless of how many people are here, is 9 minutes. So I encourage you, if you're here in opposition, to go ahead and get out of your chair, come up and line up on the right side of the room behind the person at the microphone. And if we see that there's 7 or 8 people that want to speak and the total time allotted for opposition is 9 minutes, then from time to time, I do have to interrupt people to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be heard. I will say, if you're here in your opposition to a case and there's somebody else that's spoken in front of you, make sure not to be repeating what has already been said. So if the first person up has talked about the traffic concerns that they have, and you're the second person, then you might not need to mention that there are traffic concerns, because it isn't necessarily helpful to the Planning Commission to hear the same thing repeated for 9 minutes, which has happened before. So, try to present us with new information. After the opposition gets done, the applicant will come back up to the microphone and have 2 minutes to respond to what the opposition has pointed out. All the conversation that takes place today will be between the Planning Commission and the person at the microphone, or the Planning Commission and staff. From time to time, people get confused and think that, they're sitting out here where you're sitting right now and that they can address the Planning Commission. You can't. You can only address the Planning Commission if you're the person at the microphone. And so I think people think I'm rude because I tell them you can't talk right now. But it's just the rules for our meeting. Then the Planning Commission will take action in the cases of rezonings. Those are recommendations to the governing body, both the County Commission and the City Council. And so you'll need to follow up with County Commission and City Council and the dates for their meetings. Mr. Schultz, did I miss anything?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Welcome, Mayor Kelly. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. First item on our agenda under subdivision plats and variances is SD 2022-0045, and this is a preliminary plat for Farrell Ridge subdivision lots 1 through 56, located at 9500 block of Highway 58. And it has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2022-0046. And this is also a preliminary plat, and it's Grasshopper Estate Subdivision, Phase 3, lots 69 through 88, located at 11800 block of Maddox Drive, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve. I need a second, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2022-0048. Preliminary plat located at Mountain View Estate Subdivision, lots 1 through 66, and the community lots 67 and 68, located at 8900 block of Transport Lane, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2022-0049. It's a final plat located at Coral Road Subdivision. It's lots 1 through 18, located at 6855 Sawyer Road, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Barry, you can be done. Yeah. All right, next case, first case under old business is case 2022-0210, and this is located at 806 Spears Avenue. It's application to rezone from R1 residential zone to RTZ residential townhouse zero lot line zone, and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive opposition email from the Neighborhood Association in regard to this request. My understanding, the opposition is not necessarily the use. They are opposed to townhomes. That's why staff has a recommendation to condition this to single-family detached only. The need for the zone allows them to have the smaller lots that R1 does not allow.
All right. I'm going to ask again, is the applicant present? Okay, you're here. Thank you. Yeah, and we do have a motion. Is there any opposition present? Okay. And it has been seconded. Any discussion? I do think it's worth just Councilwoman Hill to make sure that we approve it with conditions. Mr. Payne. We have a motion to approve with conditions. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is 2022-0213, and this is located at 7725 Shallowford Road, and it's an application to rezone from R1 residential zone to R4 special zone. Staff is recommended to deny the R4 special zone and approve an R3 residential zone. Is there any opposition present? And is the applicant present? Mr. Schultz.
Do we go through the whole presentation or just the staff rec?
Just the staff recommendation.
Sure. Staff looked at this, the land use plan, the East Brainerd plan, which recommends a campus type facility for this location. Staff felt the R4 zone does allow offices and some commercial uses that are not present on the northern side of Shallowford Road. And staff felt R3 is more appropriate in this location, so staff recommended to approve R3 with no conditions. There was opposition last month. I'll let them speak, but mostly centered around density on this request.
Okay. Chairman Ledford, are you going to want to speak in regards to this case? Okay. Can the applicant come on up?
Good day. Yeah, same as last month for
Name
those.
and address.
Mike Bridges,
Thank you.
Surface Architecture. I'm representing the potential property owner in this case. We would agree with the staff recommendation. We are completely fine moving to an R3 rather than R4 zone. We feel like it coordinates very well with the area future use plan in place for this part of Shallowford Road. Keep it pretty short and sweet there. We've been in communications with neighboring developments with Morning Point, Grace Academy, as well as the subdivision across the street. We've heard concerns about traffic. We've heard concerns about density. We've already made some concessions in that regard. Conversations are ongoing. We feel like they've been positive in nature. We feel like we're in a good place with this one, with the neighbors and with the potential property owner. So I feel like it makes sense for this lot, I think, to be an R3 zone. I think just with the proportions of the lot itself, the narrow nature of the lot, it would be very difficult, in my opinion, to get something that's a little bit lower density to be pretty functional for this lot. So I think it's a no-brainer to go to something that's a little bit higher density. I think the key in this case is to get it to a level of density that's agreeable to the client and to the neighboring developments. And I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about that here in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak? Is there anybody else here in opposition?
Franklin Farrow, 7719 Shallowford Road, Morning Point, next door. We have been working with Mike and his team. We appreciate their flexibility and the various meetings we've been going through. We've made progress. And as mentioned in his brief report just now, the density continues to probably be the one element that we're trying to wrestle to the ground. When we developed Morning Point next door about 6 years ago, we were before this board or similar boards like this, dealing with density ourselves. And my recollection, I can't nail it to the exact formula, but we were 9.5 to 10 units per acre. So at this point in time, you'll see a 78 unit Morning Point building sitting next door to this property. We think that consistency with us and the village of Ashwood next door to us to the west, they have a similar density. So there's been a density precedent already set. And I just don't think that it should be just wiped away 4 or 5 years later and double the density be allowed. So that's our one sticking point. We think 10 probably per unit, which would be put them right at 49 to 50 units would be appropriate, given the fact that we were held to a similar density formula about 6 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just the proposal is 4.92 acres in size. Proposed number of units is 100. That's a density of 20, as requested by the applicant. Just for comparison.
And would R3 have any density caps associated with it?
It's about 18 and 19 per acre.
Okay. Is the by right cap?
It's by right.
But the zoning R3 would limit the density.
Yes, based on the acres of that property. So it's based on acres.
And that's the number you
It's
just.
about 18 and 19 roughly per acre.
Okay. And do you know what Morning Point is next door?
I don't. Do you know off the top of my head?
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions for staff or the applicant or opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that it appears that there's been some good dialogue between the opposition and the applicant, and I think that is trending in the right direction. And sounds like they have a little more time, obviously, before it gets to City Council as well. So at this time, I think it's appropriate for us to go ahead and move this on to the council level. So I'll make a motion to approve the staff's recommendation.
We have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to understand from the staff, we've just completed this Area 11 plan and approved it. Help me better understand what this goal for this campus type is on this very long and skinny piece of property. What might fit on this and that would be a campus type development?
Well, I have a few opinions of that, but I mean, just by the nature of the configuration of this property, it's just going to be challenging to find exactly the right. I think what's been proposed, I agree that there could be some additional considerations of the amount of the number of units. But again, I think in terms of just being such a long, narrow site, I think multifamily is probably good, or something like that. Townhomes would be a good use of this property. Again, I think it's just a very odd shaped piece of property, and so there's not. If the neighbors can get comfortable with it, I think that's probably good. Like obviously, staff recommended support.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all
I
true.
think the campus was meant to be like an extension of a church type facility or some type of school, Grace Baptist sitting there, that type of use. And I think last month I was asked about current zoning in R1. Based on R1, the number of acres, taking out 20% for roads, you can get roughly 23 single family dwellings on this property on the current zoning of R1.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is 2022-02136, and this is located at 777 East Brainerd Road. And it's an application to rezone from R1 to C2. Staff is recommended to deny C2 and approve UGC for part of the property, I guess. Mr. Schultz, maybe you can.
That is correct. Yeah, we had originally staff looked at this. We had a recommendation to deny the entire request, which is on the site plans on the screen, and recommend UGC for the front portion. This case was deferred last month. We did meet with the applicant, I guess, a couple weeks ago, and the applicants proposed some 3 conditions, if you will. And this is for the UGC. The applicant's requesting UGC for the back portion of the site plan, which is these 2 parcels that show no use. Then the front portion, that'll be a C2 with no conditions. But the proposed conditions on the UGC is buildings limited to a maximum height of 3 stories. Development shall provide pedestrian connectivity to Jack Benson Park across Jenkins Road, providing a crosswalk, pavement markings and signage from the development to the existing walking path. That way it provides a connection and provides a pedestrian connection to adjacent park. And finally, condition number 3 is prohibit some nuisance type uses such as retail sales and service establishments, bakeries, meat and fish markets, bowling alleys, billiard rooms, theaters, hospitals, commercial signs, motels and hotels, furniture and applicant sales, auto-oriented uses, animal hospitals, open markets, adult-oriented establishments, and dog kennels. Those would be prohibited uses in the UGC. So this comes to you with a recommendation to approve C2 in the front with no conditions and UGC in the back with conditions.
Mr. Schultz, can you show us where that, go back to the conditions. Sorry. The condition number 2, can you show us where on the site plan that would be required?
This is an older site plan. Maybe the applicant can provide better clarification on that. But we're thinking it's right through here. Some of this driveway is. There's a walking path that connects you to Jack Benson Park. It would line up with that connection. There's not a definitive location where it should be on these 2 parcels, but it's in this area here. This would be zoned UGC.
Okay.
Maybe the applicant can provide further clarification on that.
Okay. Any questions for staff before we hear from public?
We're not necessarily a nuisance, but they don't want. They want to prohibit those uses. The applicant.
Is there any opposition present on this case? Is the applicant present? Okay. Can you come on up to the mic?
And I will say, where that UGC is, it is closer to residential. That's why there's a concern of some of those uses abutting that.
Clint Wolford, 412 Georgia Avenue, the Wolford Development. Overall, we're fine with the recommendation that staff has made after we met with them. So I don't really have anything other to add to it more than what they have so far.
Can you go back to the conditions one more time?
Sure.
On that condition number 2, the extent of the requirement is all in the public right-of-way improvement on number 2 and on their property.
That's my understanding.
How do we make sure that that doesn't turn into the developer having to improve, adjacent property or offsite property? Because the one thing that strikes me odd about that is the potential for the developer to be somehow required by some city department to put in a handicap ramp and make sidewalk improvements on the other side of East Brainerd Road. So either we change that condition to limit that improvement to the applicant's property and the right-of-way adjacent. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't
That's
think we
fine.
can require for the developer to improve property that's off-site.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to change that word, add that wording to it's on the developer's property or the right of way adjacent to that lot.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we didn't somehow trigger handicap ramps and those sorts of things on the property across.
Sure.
from
Yeah,
the property.
we can reword that to
Okay.
make it match.
Anything else? I'd entertain a motion. We have a motion to approve amending condition number 2, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know, did you ask if there was any opposition present on this?
I did.
Oh, did you? Okay, I'm sorry. I missed that.
Is there any opposition? Thank you. First case under new business is case 2022-0209. This is located at 3917 Lightfoot Mill Road, and it's an application to rezone from R1 to R2, and it's a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Mr. Schultz, can you brief us on this one?
Sure. This is case 2022-209. This is a request to rezone from R1 residential to R2. Proposed use is a duplex or 2-family detached residential dwelling. It's 2 units. That's a density of 5 dwelling units per acre. On the screen, look at the zoning map. There's R1 to the north, R1 to the south, and west of this site. Directly across the street, there is some R2, but primarily those are used as single-family detached dwellings. Beyond that R2 is manufacturing zoning. There's been some history in this area on rezoning requests and this property. From 2020, there was a request to rezone the subject property that's in front of you today, as well as the property behind this property from R1 to R2. Staff and Planning Commission recommended to deny the request. The application was drawn by the applicant and prior city council. Other than 2021, the same property was, we received a request to rezone from R1 to RT1. Again, staff and Planning Commission recommended to deny. The application was withdrawn. Looking at this piece of property, it's currently vacant. To the north is single-family detached. To the west and south is single-family detached. And then to the east across Lightfoot Mill are single-family detached dwellings as well as industrial uses. This is a view of the site from Lightfoot Mill. North of the site, which is a single-family dwelling. South of the site is a large lot with a single-family detached dwelling on that property. This is east of the site, which is all single-family detached dwellings. And these homes here are zoned R2. This property is located in Highway 58 Community Plan, which is adopted in 2002. That plan is 20 plus years old. It's an older plan. It recommends low-density residential, which is primarily detached single-family dwellings, with a residential density of 1 to 4 dwelling units per acre. And that was one of the reasons staff recommended deny about 2 years ago, was waiting on new land use plans to provide guidance on whether we should introduce duplexes or 2-family dwellings in this area, which has been zoned R1. Nothing's changed since that time, so staff recommends to deny. The request is not compatible with the adopted plan. The R2 zone would introduce much smaller lot sizes and a higher density into a predominant single-family neighborhood. There is one thing that has changed since last time. City Council adopted the ability to have ADUs on the property. So this property, if built with a single-family dwelling, could establish a second unit on the property through ADU. So with all those reasonings, staff recommended to deny this request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? All right, we'll hear from the applicant. Come on up. If you will, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Diana Gauss, and I'm a realtor with Premier Property Group, and I live in 219 slots and a few lots in Chattanooga City and Hamilton County. And just by looking at this lot, it's quite a large lot, and with recent approval for accessory dwelling units, it would be really hard to place residents who would share a driveway, and they would share a mailbox, and they would share common things because it's residential R1. So it's not feasible to to place good two families on in accessory dwelling unit. Excuse what I'm asking and propose. For this big lot, it would be duplex or separate two family. And with the current issue with housing and this area being in the industrial area, and there are many working families there living, it's close to work, and it would be very convenient to have.
Any questions for the applicant? Pretty sure I asked earlier, but is there any opposition present? There's none.
I move to approve the applicant's request to go to R2.
We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next case is 2022-0229, and this is located at the Chattanooga, or the applicant is the Chattanooga Metropolitan Airport Authority, and it's located at Jubilee Drive, Hancock Road, and 5709 Lee Highway. And it's an application to rezone from R1 and C2 to M1, and staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? And you're aware of the conditions that staff has recommended, and do you have any questions or concerns in regards to those conditions? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve the staff recommendation, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next case is a mandatory referral, 2022-0230, and this is located at the 1800 block of Fairlay Street, and it's a right-of-way closure. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is 2022-0231, and this is located at 2031 Yoder Lane, and it's a special permit for a single wide manufactured home. It has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is 2022-0232, 0233 located at 4905-4907 Patton Town Road. It's an application to rezone from R1 to R3. Staff has recommended approving with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? And in regards to the conditions, what's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve. And it has been seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I feel like with a Mike Price case, there should be some discussion. It feels wrong that we would just approve it. Case 2022-0234 is located at 8229 and 0 Middle Valley Road, and it's an application to rezone from A1 to M1. Staff is recommended to deny. Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition present? All right, Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is 2022-234. This is in the county. This is a request for rezone from A1 Agriculture District to M1 Industrial District. That's about 1.34 acres in size, and proposed use is excavation, contractor, and landscape supply sales on this piece of property. On the zoning map in front of you, it's zoned A1. To the north is R2A and R1 and A1. To the west is A1, and to the south is A1, and then to the east of this site is R2A and R5. Just looking at this map in general, you can see no industrial zones or industrial districts in this general area. So this is primarily a residential neighborhood. There has been some zoning history on this property. In 2021, there was a request to rezone from A1 to C2. The application was withdrawn, so staff never wrote a staff recommendation. Looking at land uses, this is a vacant piece of property with an abandoned building on the property. To the north is single-family detached. To the south and west is single-family detached. And to the east, across Middle Valley Road, there's some duplexes and single-family detached dwellings. This is a view of what was the former building that's on this site. This is adjacent to the site where the contractor's business is. It looks like it's presently taking place on this property. Another view of some of the contractor supply that's happening on this property. This is the Middle Valley on the right-hand side. The site's just on the left-hand side of the screen. Here's south of the site. You can see it's all, again, single-family detached dwellings. This is east of the site, which looks like a duplex. There is no adopted land use plan to provide guidance on this property, so we sort of rely on the comp plan, which recommends level 3, which is adopted in 2016. But again, there is no official adopted land use plan that provides guidance on the introduction of manufacturing zoning or uses in this area. So staff recommends to deny. The proposal is not compatible with surrounding single-family and two-family uses in the area. The proposed M1 district would introduce nuisance uses to the area that could impact existing residential uses. The proposed use of a landscape yard and excavation business with potential on-site retail sales is too intense for the site and surrounding uses. And again, there is no adopted land use plan that provides guidance on the introduction of manufacturing uses or zones at this location. So that's how staff got the recommendation of deny.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
My name is Dakota Griffith, 8114 Ashby Gap Way. So the primary purpose of that property, we're buying it with the intention or the hope of using it as an office for an excavation company. It's not really, the M1 seems extreme kind of for what we're using it. It's not equipment storage. If equipment's there, it'll be on a very short basis. We don't keep equipment at our office. The landscape sales, that was really more as a thought of, because we do deal with landscapes and hardscapes for what we do, we thought about offering it to the public. But that's not something that we're hung on. We're not opposed to any restrictions as far as that goes. We did meet with Hamilton County Highway Department before we got into this to make sure the entrances and everything aligned with what they said. They said that there are 2 entrances to the property, one on Fair Oaks and then one on Middle Valley Road. Middle Valley Road would be the primary entrance, but that old building operated as a auto repair shop for 30 plus years. and it is an eyesore in the area. It is everyone we've talked to is very happy to see something done there. Mrs. Hartberger, which is the house right next to it, she owned the property and used to rent the shop out. She's on board with the plan. Actually, the reason she sold it to us was because of the ideas. I feel like we've got an overall positive feedback from the neighbors and things, just because it is an eyesore in the middle of a really nice area. So as far as we've got plans for nice fencing, landscaping, things like that. We've been doing some small stuff there. The equipment you see there has been because we've been trying to make it somewhat usable, kind of on good faith going into this. But yeah, me and my brother own the company, we live within 5 minutes of the shop. So our goal would be to make it something nice that people are proud of. Not so M1 does seem a little harsh when you read what it's open to, but we would be open to any restrictions or anything like that. Main purpose being an office. We want to either remodel the building that's there, if feasible, or replace it with something similar. Just depends either way. Once we get to that building.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
So, sorry. Just a question, quick question. And I think, Brian, you mentioned that they were operating the photo that you took was operating adjacent to the property. Or that was where they were currently operating adjacent to the property. You mentioned that you're using the property that way currently.
So that's some of our equipment there, but we've been bringing dirt in on that high side right there and kind of filling. There was an old portable building that I guess was full of termites. We tore it down because this is our daughter, the lady that lived next door, asked us to.
I guess a follow up to that is, so you mentioned that you're flexible on how you use the property. Is there, Mr. Chairman, there may be a way that we can be a little bit more flexible for him to go back to staff, right?
Yeah, that was my thought is M1. I mean, I don't ever vote. I think I've only ever voted 3 times, all in opposition to Mr. Price. So you don't have anything to worry about. But I do think M1 is the wrong zone for this area. Surely, to goodness, there's a more appropriate way for them to be able to, take advantage of the property. But the concern with M1 is that they could put a concrete crusher there, and I mean we'd be right back to where we were. You remember the company that has the mulching machine over there?
Yeah.
Groundscapes. I think y'all voted or y'all suggested it be denied.
Sure.
They ended up withdrawing the case. I don't know where they've relocated to. And then we've recently had that whole discussion about the quarry and the grinding equipment. I think M1 is just really a bad idea.
We do have a special permit for a contractor's outdoor storage yard. I think that's A1 or R1. It has to be in a specific zone to do that. It doesn't allow the office use.
But outdoor storage could be problematic over time too, because while it's a okay thing today, a contractor's outdoor storage could be very, very, very unsightly. Not yours, but I mean, you could just imagine somebody who has a hard time throwing things away. Basically, they can turn into a junkyard.
But to help us, we need a specific use of what he's trying to do, not several uses. We need to narrow it down to specific use in that property. Office you can handle through O1 or a commercial type zone to allow the retail sales, but if it goes beyond that, it may not be appropriate.
If we were to defer this, would you be able to meet with staff and hopefully come up with a better zone that might be more amenable?
And I will say for our record, and I believe the applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they did talk to Hamilton County Building Inspections. They suggested M1, so that's what we went with. And I guess it's based on what was told to them.
We have a motion to defer for 30 days. And it has been seconded. Any discussion?
Probably something associated with farming, but as far as I don't know. That's building inspection department.
Any other discussion? You can have chickens. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So, sir, you've got 30 days and you'll be back before us. I think ideally you would meet with staff and you would come back maybe with a zone that allows you to be able to do what it is that you need to do, but not in one. Is my agenda the only one that goes from 6 to 9? They all do that? Okay. Next.
We did have a lot of, that was error on our part. We had a lot of things on your agenda today that are not here. We had three or four.
We don't need excuses.
Well, you will see
Mr.
these.
Schultz, if you can't number a piece of paper,
I know.
how can we trust staff recommendations?
Hey, this is that public education.
I mean, this is just, it's
I will tell you.
a real loss in confidence here.
Well, we did have 3 of those that were drawn at the last minute because the county enforced a moratorium on short-term vacation laws.
I was just wanting to make sure I had.
And I can add a couple items if you'd like me to. I can.
No, you could add us.
We can fill those back.
7 and 8. All right. Item 9 on our agenda, case 2022-0236, is located at 1109 Fairview Avenue. And it's an application to rezone from UIX4 Urban Industrial Mixed Use Zone to URM3 Urban Residential Multi-Unit Zone, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, case 2022-0237, is located at 42021 and 22 East 16th Street. And this is an application to rezone from URA3 to UCX4. And staff is recommended to deny this application. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? All right. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is case 2022-237 for 420, 421, and 422 East 16th Street. This request is to rezone from form-based code to another form-based code, such as URA3 to UCX4, which is the urban commercial mixed-use zone. This property is approximately 1.13 acres in size. Proposed use is a hotel, restaurant, retail, and remote parking. Looking at the zoning map, you do have UCX3 to the north. To the south is URA3. To the east is URM3. And there's a small sliver of a park, UPK zone. And to the west is URM3. And then you do have further south UCX. This site was rezoned from R3 to URA3 in 2016 as part of the form-based code. And then in 2019, property to the east of this site was rezoned from UPK to URM3. Again, the closest UCX4 zone is adjacent to the site to the north. This property currently has single-family attached dwellings on it. To the north of this property along East Main Street are commercial uses. To the west of the site along Washington Street is multifamily. We do have some single-family detached dwellings to the southwest. And then to the south of this site are institutional uses. And then to the east, this site's vacant land. Here's a view from East 16th Street of the site. Another view of some of the homes that are on 16th, on the site. This is north of the site along Main Street. This is south of the site, which is a church. And this is a view east of the site, which is the railroad tracks. And beyond those railroad tracks are single-family and multifamily developments. And this is west of the site, which are some townhomes and multifamily dwellings. This is in the downtown plan, which was adopted in 2006. Again, that plan is 18 or 16 plus years old. There is no land use plan recommendation provided in the downtown plan, but it did provide some notes. Construct a range of new housing around Jefferson Heights Park. This mix should include single-family housing, duplexes, and apartment units. It also mentioned the continuation of residential development. It did not mention commercial expansion of this general location. So the proposal is not compliant with existing residential uses and development form in the area. Again, the downtown plan recommends introducing new and variety of housing types. The expansion of the UCX 4 zone will introduce a variety of potential commercial uses that are not compatible with the surrounding residential form. And the current zone allows for a variety of residential development, which is more appropriate for the existing uses and development form in the surrounding area. So staff recommend deny this request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
And here's the site plan submitted with the request. Again, it's just for illustration purposes. The property to the south, that's where the proposed hotel would be. And then across, I guess, the 16th Street, that's where the single-family detached dwellings, I guess they will be revamped and refurbished into single-family dwellings.
Yeah, are there any questions for staff, Mayor Kelly?
I may have missed this, but is there commercial included in the ground floor of the hotels of the plan?
I believe so. I believe so. On his application, he did say commercial, so I'm assuming that'd be the ground floor story, commercial retail.
I just think it's terribly confusing to me that if the applicant wanted to do 9 short-term vacation rentals, we'd have a room full of opposition, and they've rezoned, or they're asking for a rezoning that would allow for a hotel, and we don't have any opposition present. That's just confusing to me. Can you? Where are the signs posted?
Let's see if we have any pictures.
I mean, this is an incredibly
Up there.
active community.
You'd have to really drive on 16th Street what the applicant owns. He would have been given 4 signs where it butts a public right of way.
And where would those 4 signs have been located?
Here's one on the tree by the one property. Here's another picture of the site. Then we also mail letters to any abutting property owner. So they would have gotten a letter from RPA as well.
Okay.
So he would have at least 4 on East 16th and probably 1 on to the east and 1 to the west here.
Councilwoman Hill.
I'd like to make sure that I fully understand within the site plan that's been proposed, how many detached family homes would be going away versus how many would remain. So we've got 7, it looks like. These are tiny, naturally occurring, affordable homes right now. Are they getting torn down and replaced with an actual hotel? I'm just confused with these 2 pieces. I need to better understand.
The applicant can provide the information. I'm showing the aerial map here. The ones north of 16th, looks like I'm counting 6 or 7 there. So he's probably refurbishing those. The ones to the south, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are probably being replaced by hotel. But I'll let the applicant provide further clarification.
Landon Kennedy, Thetford Road Architecture. So to answer your question, the 7 existing shotgun homes would be to remain as is, and we would just refurbish them with the new use. So right now they're just single family detached. Under the current application, we would be seeking for some sort of minor commercial F&B, really thinking about like small maybe business incubator type situations with like a shared porch. So nothing too extravagant. We would definitely not want to demolish them and build back, a 4-story commercial new building. That would not be the intent. And so that would be the 421 address. The parcel that's planned south of East 16th Street, under the proposed application that we originally sent, it was a hotel use. But after doing different test fits with the owner and talking through it with him, he actually wanted to pivot from the hotel use to go to a multifamily use that would better align with the staff recommendation for the diversity of residential in that area. So the UCX for wouldn't be necessary on that southern portion of 16th Street. We could, we would at this point, we could do the multi-unit living 5+ units under the URM 3 designation instead. But when we tried to modify our application with a couple weeks ago, the staff had already made the recommendation, so it was a bit too late. So that's where we currently stand with the proposed intent moving forward. But I understand that you guys have, UCX for all of the lots on the site and a hotel use at the moment. So we would just want to understand our options moving forward and how we would retool the plan to better suit the area and provide that mix of residential housing options that you mentioned.
So the shotgun homes are not going to be homes in your plan. They would be business locations.
That's correct. They're roughly 750 square foot each. So yeah, that's right though. We would our goal, our vision right now they would all be kind of like business incubators, small offices, artist lofts, something to that nature that would be not single family.
Could they function as live work?
They could. We haven't done a study on live work for those homes, but I could see a scenario where that could play out. We would just have to go back and discuss it further with the property owner.
That would make sense to me.
So how many single family homes do we have on the site currently that look like they all have people living in them?
There's 7 to the north of 16th, and I'm not sure. It looks like maybe 6 or 7 to the south.
So there are conceivably 13 families living here that would all be displaced by this project. But what is the rent currently on these properties?
I'm not sure. I'd have to gather that information.
This is
Mayor Kelly.
why we're undertaking to redo our zoning code, I think, because it is confusing this kind of interface between commercial and residential uses. But I again, my anecdotal feedback from the neighborhood is that they're somewhat excited about the potential appropriate commercial uses. So I don't know if the deferral is appropriate to discuss a different approach.
Is that going to create any undue hardship to defer for 30 days?
It would not.
And Mrs. Hill, did you want to go on the record with anything in regards to that deferral? I just wanted to make sure you had a lot of questions, and if it's going to get deferred, I just wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to address the applicant before we took any action on that. We have a motion.
I
didn't hear a second, but I would hear a second. Okay.
I appreciate the offer of the mic, Chairman. I think the genuine concern I have here is that we have seen this area of our community change dramatically over the last 15 years. And the people that live in many of the new homes adjacent to this area would say this is wonderful. And much of that land that was redeveloped was empty land. But to have working people living here and rezone this to commercial just is a heavy lift for me. So I appreciate more time to think about it and learn about it.
We have a motion to defer for 30 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, so that will be clear. That 30 days, the applicant needs to contact RPA, get a meeting scheduled as soon as possible, probably next week if possible, so we can hammer out the uses and make sure we get what zones are appropriate there. So,
Yeah, and I was going to ask, but it became less relevant. I don't recall with form-based code in the past whether or not we've made recommendations to approve with certain conditions. But
we've tried not to go with
certainly
conditions.
we've tried not to.
Yeah.
But if if because of the realities of the limitations of our zoning, it becomes necessary for us to have conditions, it's helpful if staff recommends those conditions rather than those having to be created at the planning commission level.
Sure. I'm just hearing what he said today. There may be it may not need the entirety of UCX's entire site, but I've heard, so we'll find out more from the applicant.
Okay. Thank you. Next case 11, 2020, sorry, can't talk, 2022-0238, located at 671 Tremont Place, has an application to rezone from R2 to RTZ. And staff is recommended to deny the application. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition? Okay, and is the applicant present? All right. This is 238. All right, Mr. Schultz.
Sure.
If the applicant can come on up to the mic and while Mr. Schultz presents.
This is a request to rezone from R2 residential zone to RTZ, residential townhouse 0 lot line. It's a little less than an acre, and it's 0.195 acres in size. Proposing 2 units. That's a density of 10 dwelling units per acre. Proposed use is a single-family detached dwelling. Basically, it's 1 lot now. There's an existing home to the east of this side. The applicant wishes to subdivide this property and put another lot to the west. Based on the current zoning of R2, you wouldn't have the lot frontage or lot size to do that. Therefore, that's the need for the rezoning, which the RTZ does allow smaller lot sizes and lot frontage. Looking at the map, it's everything around this property is R2. To the southeast, there is an R1 zone, but everything that's general vicinity right now is R2. There's been no recent zoning history on this particular piece of property. In 2002, 2 parcels to the north, there was a request to rezone to C5, which is neighborhood commercial. City Council ended up denying that request, and there is no RTZ zone property near this site. This property is vacant. Has a single-family detached dwelling to the east. To the north is single-family detached. To the south is single-family detached, and to the west is single-family detached. To the east, across Tremont Place, there are some 2-family dwellings, but generally this is a single-family detached neighborhood. It's about 155 feet to the north of Tremont Street. There are some steep slopes on this property, which is anything over 25% in this general vicinity. This is the site from Tremont Place. This is the property. There, again, is already existing single-family home on this property. This is a view of the site from Lytle Street. This home in the back is the home I just showed you. So this is the property here. They wish to subdivide and put another home. You really can't see in this picture, but it drops off with slopes. You can see next door we have a 3-story home. I think that's because of the slope to get what's really the 2nd story on the level with Lytle Street. Here's a view of the north of the side on Tremont Place. Again, you can see it's the house to the left of the screen. The picture is the existing site. This is the south of the side on Tremont Place, which again is more single-family detached dwellings. This is the east of the side on Tremont Place, more single-family dwellings. This is actually a duplex. West of the side on Lytle Street, which again is single-family detached dwellings. This falls in one of those areas where we don't have a land use plan to provide guidance on the introduction of multifamily zoning or such as the RTZ. So we rely on the comp plan to offer some type of guidance. And it's level 5, which again, the intensity levels in the comp plans from level 1, from lease development to level 5 being the highest level of introducing some type of development on the site. And these are difficult. Staff beat this case around and round and round because again, there's no land use plan to provide guidance. It's a very tough decision. So based on the no adopted land use plan for the area to provide guidance, the RTZ zone would introduce much smaller lot sizes and higher density into the predominantly single-family neighborhood. This request could be considered in the future with adoption of an updated area plan, which we're undertaking here soon, hopefully. Staff recommends to deny this request. Also, with already having a primarily single-family detached dwelling on the site, the applicant could, in theory, conduct an ADU or build an ADU on the site. So there's options there. So really, the staff boiled down to lack of a plan providing any guidance in this general location. So staff took the conservative approach and recommended to deny the request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Mr. Mabee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Schultz, would it be possible to do 2 single-family houses in R2 on a lot like that?
No.
It kind of looks like it below that. That's why I guess that's
that one below it. That has been subdivided, but a lot of North Chattanooga Because it was platted back in the 1890s, and over the years, people have done it by deed,
So
subdividing properties off, and they wouldn't meet any standard today. If you pulled those deed lots, I would guess those were done in 1920s, well before zoning or anything.
So these like lots of record.
There'd be lots of record, deeded lots of record.
And so the goal is he needs this RTZ to get the square footages and setbacks to be able to do it.
Yeah, he in theory he wants to subdivide, but to do that, he's going to need variances on lot size and lot frontages. But I think Board of Appeals would say that's a self-imposed hardship. It's going to be very difficult to get. So one option is to rezone. But doing that, also, we don't have a plan that provides guidance on introducing that zone at this location. That's why we're sort of waiting on the new land use plans to come in and be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think staff, in your comments, or maybe you did, just the precedence nature of the fact that all of these lots front both Lyerly and Tremont, and it would also be setting a precedent for all the way down that street in terms of double loading that street.
It would.
All right, sir.
Hi, my name is Michael King. I live at 321 Mill Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm the applicant. First, I wanted to say thanks to the planning department and all of their help, especially senior planner Cassie Klein. Super helpful. This is my first time through this process. Essentially, our goal is to move my family here from Atlanta, and so we've been visiting on the weekend and scouting out properties and purchased this property with the intent of moving to it because it's in the Normal Park school system or school district, and thought that we would have the opportunity to use that large lot space consistent with the surrounding properties, the 5 lots to the south of it, which were subdivided, I have since learned in the past. So, but that it accommodated 2 single family dwellings clearly fairly well within the neighborhood, and then the duplex and triplex to the immediate east. We thought it was consistent. I've since learned that about lots of record, and I've since learned that the only way that we could build another single family house on this is either demolish the existing one, chop off half of the existing one and turn it into an ADU, or rezone. So not being one to want to tear down a nice 1940s 2-1 bungalow, I'd rather not chop half off that beautiful little house. Tearing 200 feet off of it to turn it into an ADU also would render it next to useless and be silly. So this is sort of my last option. In consideration of the ADU option, adding an ADU to this current lot, that would create sort of like a neighborhood of tiny homes. This is a nigh tiny home. Adding another tiny home to that wouldn't really get my family up here, although it might make for a nice rental property. And that said, it seems like a very logical path forward could be the approval with very specific conditions about only building a single family home and whatever other conditions make sense for the plan for the neighborhood. And again, I'm fairly new to Chattanooga. I enjoy neighborhoods, and I wouldn't want to change the nature of the neighborhoods. So I'm super respectful of that and hope that there's a path forward. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? We'll hear from the opposition, and then you'll have an opportunity to come back up.
Fred Lewick, 3469 Travertine Lane in Chattanooga. Representing my daughter who lives right on that block, actually one of the adjacent parcels. We just want to raise our concern. We're not against or opposed in building something there, but water drainage is a key problem on that block, and I think staff presented the slope of the lot really as a problem. They didn't say about water drainage, but they did say the slope of the lot is steep, and putting a lot more cement there to build a house is going to exacerbate that problem and make it a bigger problem. So there has to be some type of a plan for water runoff if something does get built there for the neighbors' sakes. Parking is also very difficult on that block. I did see from the drawing, but it was very hard to tell from the drawing submitted that there's a little bit of front parking. Can't tell if it's one spot or two. And maybe there's parking in the back. I'm not sure. But we want to make sure if something does get built there going forward, that it addresses the water drainage on that street, Lytle Street, and it addresses the parking there. A lot of kids that play on that street. We want to make sure the cars don't park and block the sidewalks, because that does happen sometimes. Not that we can protect that here, but that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a question for the opposition?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. King, you can come back up. And you've got a question for staff? Councilwoman.
Sort of a question for staff. So this is my city council district, and I'm very familiar with Lytle Street and Tremont Place. Tremont Place, if we were talking about building a house on Tremont Place, I would be really concerned because that's barely a road. It's really more of an alley. And so, you know, as I think about moving up Tremont Place, I'm not comfortable with that, but I think the placement of those houses, they would have to come down. There is a great deal of variety of house type on Lytle Street. And I do appreciate within this drawing the parking pad off street, because there is a great deal of parking on the street, on Lytle Street. I am comfortable with this split of this lot for another single family home, but I would like us to think about what the conditions are. I am not comfortable with then you going to BOZA, the board for variances, and asking for different setbacks and different side pieces, and do I have to have, you know, all that stuff? No. I mean, you work with what you have. Also, I would add to our chairman's point about, you know, we look at the adjacent JD Lane, which is basically an alley as well. I will not be comfortable adding a ton of homes to JD Lane without significant improvement of that street. But the way that Lytle sits, this home, frankly, I think the one that would have the most issue with water is the other home that this gentleman already owns, and potentially the one other one there on Tremont Place. And there are requirements for stormwater. So staff, help me with what kind of conditions we would move forward with. This is a little different because it is, in fact, in my district. So I will be hands-on related to conditions if we need to.
Sure. And I'll just throw two that I heard so far is single-family detached dwellings only, and probably off-street parking to be provided. Anybody else think of anything else? Based on current landscape, parking requirements, whatever that standard is, I think it's 1.5 or 2. And I will say, Councilman Hill is correct. I think it seems like they're parking on Lytle Street, but it's on the other side of this property. It's a very narrow street as well.
Mm-hmm. It's a big old hill.
Yeah.
I've walked it. But also this lot has that drop off already. It would be appropriate to have a home facing the other side of Lytle, or facing Lytle.
Is there high concerns? 2.5 stories, 35 feet is the max.
Yeah, I mean, it's right next door to a gigundous home.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking right now just use and maybe off-street parking provided.
Yeah. Okay. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to approve this request with conditions that it must be limited. It will be limited to a single family home, and you will be required to have 2 parking spots on site. And we can talk more about other conditions if the neighborhood has some other concerns. I will say drainage is a big deal. I've talked to too many people on JD and on Tremont who say, listen, this gigundous house next to me, my basement floods, and I'm not okay with that. So that's my motion, Chair.
So we do have a motion. It has been seconded. I'll open the floor for discussion. We'll start that with a question. What are the setbacks on RTZ next to R1? Or what is this, R2 it's next to?
It's R2. I was trying to find that real quick. I think it's 5 foot on the other side. And then the front is average.
I'm just afraid. I mean, my understanding is RTZ to the R zones has a bigger setback. Maybe it doesn't in the urban overlay or something like that. I'm just concerned that there's no way to build a house when he's done rezoning it with the setbacks. Because it's a narrow lot. What is it, 50 feet?
Yeah,
Side
all 50
setback
feet.
is 5 feet.
Okay, it is 5.
So we changed that in January of this year, 5 foot. And then the rear is 15, and then the front is the average within 300 feet. So he have to, whatever the average setback is in 300 feet, he can do that, plus or minus 5 feet. But it is 5 feet on the sides.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, by the way, welcome to Chattanooga. We're glad you're here. Next case, item 12 on our agenda is case 2022-0240, and this is located at 2525 William Street and 257 West 26th Street, and it's an application to rezone from UGC with conditions to UGC with some new conditions. Or I guess is the applicant's intent here to, what is this, Mr. Schultz? I mean, well, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it's rezone. Remember, we changed the UGC back a couple months ago. So this was rezoned prior to August 30th, 2022. Anything rezoned UGC prior to that date was held to the 12,000 square foot building footprint.
Gotcha.
And that was removed. So anything after that date doesn't have that condition. We also changed the minimum or maximum height from 4 stories to 5 stories. So the applicant is rezoning to UGC post 8/30/22 to get away from the deviation on the maximum building footprint. But we do have 2 conditions, which are the same conditions being carried over.
Residential use is only a maximum height of 3 stories.
Yeah.
All right. And is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Are we so lucky? All right. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve with conditions, I'm assuming, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes. It does. Anything moving forward after August 30th is not held to those standards, but we had a lot of cases that were rezoned previously to UGC that had that 12,000 square foot maximum. And I believe that's what council adopted, knowing that. So if we took that away, you all of a sudden have UGC unlimited in square footage. So that was our thinking. Basically, yeah. So if you want to get you either had a deviation in the past, or you come back and look at the rezoning. That way, there's a public hearing on introducing bigger, larger buildings into our neighborhoods.
All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Price. Next case is item 13 on our agenda. It's case 2022-0241, and this is located at 1901 Thrasher Pike and 7600 block of Hickson Pike. And it's an application to rezone from A1 and R2A rural residential district to R1 single family residential district, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we did receive some emails in opposition as well. You should have those in front of you.
Okay. Can you bring the petition up and give that to Mr. Maybe? And then we can look at that while we hear from staff. I think staff is present. Or, I'm sorry, is the applicant present? Okay, there you are. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. There's 2 cases associated with this. One's the rezoning, and the next case is 2022-242, which is a PUD. So I'll go through this case. The rezoning. This is a request to rezone from A1 Agriculture District and R2A Rural Residential District to R1 Single Family. This is located in unincorporated Hamilton County. The proposal is for single family detached subdivision. It's 24 acres in size. They're proposing 109 units. That's a density of 4.5 dwelling units per acre. There's a mixture of residential zones in this area from This property again is A1 and R2A. There's R2A to the north and A1. To the south is A1 and R1 and R2A. To the east is A1 and R2A. And further east along Hickson Pike, you do see some manufacturing and commercial zones. To the west of this site is A1 and R2A. So there's a mixture of zones in this general location. There's no recent zoning history on this site, but to the north and south of this site in 2011 and 2002, there were some properties rezoned from A1 to R1. This is currently a vacant piece of property. To the north is single family detached. To the west is single family detached and large vacant tracts of land. To the south is, I think that's residential. It says vacant. It has been developed or currently being developed, the residential dwellings. This is a site from Thrasher Pike. Another view of the site from Thrasher Pike. This is north of the site on Turnberry Circle, which is again single-family detached dwellings. This is south of the site on Evan Way. This is the area which was labeled as vacant. Again, the site's just to the left of this picture. This is east of the site on Clara Drive, again, which is more single-family detached dwellings. This is a view of the site from looking towards Evans Way. Again, there isn't a land use plan to provide guidance on this request. This is in the comp plan, which is adopted in 2016, which recommends levels 2 and 4. Hamilton County Highway Department had some comments on connectivity should be considered toward Headland Drive, abutting parcels in an unnamed right-of-way that connects the site to Hickson Pike. Also have to coordinate with the county regarding connectivity requirements. A geotech report will be required, as well as a traffic impact study to be required during permitting and development. This proposal is compatible with the comp plan. The request is compatible surrounding land uses and development forms. So staff, in terms of zoning request, recommends to approve. And if you would like, I'd go on to the PUD if you want to, or you want to handle these one at a time.
We'll handle them one at a
Okay.
time. But,
that's the zoning case, so staff recommends to approve.
Right. And to that end, you've recommended approval on the PUD as well.
We have. And I think the applicant wishes to add some conditions. I think they had a neighborhood meeting one night last week, I guess, or this week, and they want to add some conditions to this PUD.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chambers.
Thanks for the introduction. My name is Rocky Chambers. Office is at 400 East Main Street. I'm here with Rise Partners, who will be developing this community. As Mr. Schultz presented and indicated, we did meet with the neighbors. And one thing I do want to point out to the neighbors is that they're looking at a plan right now that shows more lots than we presented last week. And the reason for that is after we looked at the surrounding uses and thought more about it, before we met with the neighbors, we already reduced it back to a density, lot sizes, that's kind of conforming with an R1 zone. So we're not asking for anything more than really what's kind of around us. There's subdivisions on all three sides of us, and we're presenting a plan that kind of conforms with that R1 style use. So 101 lots is what's presented here, 6,000 square foot minimum lot size, 50 foot wide, and kind of conforms with, like I say, the three subdivisions that's around us. In our view, I think it conforms a lot better as an R1 use than it would as agricultural in this neighborhood setting. Staff brought up the idea of the transportation's request there, and I'd say that it's certainly not our preference to disturb the adjacent neighbors any more than we have to, and so we're not showing those connecting streets that would kind of be an intrusion into the neighborhoods there. They also brought up the idea of a traffic impact study. We've already done that. We had Steve Myers do that for us, and he came back and said we'd have about a 10% impact in Thrasher Pike. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to go through Thrasher Pike is there was a lot more capacity there than what we needed. For now, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant before we hear from the opposition? All right. We'll hear from those that are here that wish to speak in opposition. If there's more than one of you, is there more than one of you, or are you going to speak on
Yes,
that?
there is, but I'm going to speak. We've hired an engineer also.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to speak, or is it just you today?
I think it's just me.
Okay, well, that means you've got the full 9 minutes.
Okay. Angela Masterson, 1867 Thrasher Pike. And my family has owned this property. My mom, my aunt lives next to me, and I have the empty lot, and we are backing up to their development. And I have 3 acres there. Our properties, we have a real concern that the change in zoning will negatively impact our properties. Our main concern is the increased flooding that this project will create. The FEMA flood insurance rate map identifies the drainage stream from the proposed development through our property as a branch to Lick Branch. This drainage feature has FEMA identified base flood elevations and regulatory floodway to the limits of the study at Thrasher Pike. We have observed increased flooding when the 20 houses were built on Evans Way that he's talking about. And this proposed development is 5 times larger with over 100 houses. We recognize that housing is needed, but that growth does not have the right to impact our properties by raising the FEMA regulated base flood elevation. The statement of the purpose in the Hampton County Flood Hazard Regulations states, the purpose of regulations are to minimize public and private loss due to the flood conditions, including controlling development, which may increase flood damage. Changing the existing zone from A1 to R1 will allow 4 times the amount of homes to be built and drained directly on our properties with the recognized FEMA flood issues in the area of Thrasher Pike. The proposed rezoning will have a real and negative impact on our properties, and I respectfully request the subject property remain A1 zoning. I respectfully request that a hydraulic analysis be performed to ensure that there is no rise in the FEMA-based flood elevation on our properties. And I have pictures of what has caused from the other developments, and it's washing away the road too, you guys. The branch that goes down through my mom's property, the soil is getting washed away. We're not getting any help. And here it is. I've got pictures of it. Okay. Then I've got pictures of her front yard. So the traffic, there is a road that goes out to Hickson Pike from this piece of parcel that's not developed right now that they could have used, because the traffic on Thrasher Pike is really bad. And also the letter that we received about this rezoning, it said, I got it October 25th, and they said we had to have our opposition in by the 7th of October. And I called, and they apologized to me, but a lot of people that I talked to in the subdivision that I got their names on the petition, they thought it was just a done deal. And that was really pretty bad about the letter that we received. And I've got my copy of my letter stating October 7th instead of October, and then receiving it October 25th.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Any
Thank
questions? Hold on one second.
Okay.
Are there any questions for the opposition? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
If you want to speak, you're welcome to. We've still got time for opposition. You just need to come up to the mic. How much time have we got left? 5 minutes.
My name is Raymond Hickson. I live in Turnberry Circle. The Evans Way that she spoke about are also increasing, and I have them approved probably another 20 houses in that same little area. And there's a little creek behind the first row of houses in between where he's wanting to build and build that. He did mention he's going to raise it 20 foot. But 20 foot's not going to help anything other than push water back on the other houses. And why they have a holding pond up the very top of the hill in this development that they're going to do, I have no idea. I think it's to catch runoff from the houses up there, but it's only going to catch runoff from one house. It's not going to affect the other houses down there on the same side of the road he's on, or same side of the property lines that he's on. So I don't think there's been enough study done in the whole thing.
Okay, well, we'll have an opportunity, thank you, to ask the applicant those very questions. Thank you. Mr. Chambers, can you come back up? So you had some time left over after your earlier presentation, so I'm going to give you plenty of time to respond to what you've heard here in opposition.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to talk a little bit about stormwater. Stormwater is something that I spend probably most of my waking hours thinking about, and mostly from being a good neighbor standpoint. No one likes calls after construction's done during construction. And I found over the years that while the county has certain standards for stormwater to make sure that you don't get flooded, and they hold those pretty strictly, my personal minimums are a lot higher than that. And so you'll see a lot of the subdivisions that I design or that I work with developers on, we tend to over-design stormwater quite a bit. FEMA certainly regulates a lot of stuff downstream of us, but they don't really regulate the stuff that's right next to us. And so I would say that my personal minimums are higher. You're actually probably going to see a reduction in stormwater by the time you're done. And we can go over all the math and stuff involved in that, but it is something that we do take seriously, and we do want to make sure that that's addressed. Regarding the design of the stormwater, we can go back and forth on that. But right now we're showing location for 3 ponds throughout the community, and we're quite confident after having done this for several decades that we can make sure that what I'm saying is true. I can't really speak to the other developments around us and what they did. I can just speak to what we've done. I'm curious about what you mentioned about the 20-foot fill. I don't know where that came from, but we are, yeah, there will be some grading on the site to make sure that stormwater and grading and everything is taken care of appropriately as well. We certainly reached out to the community and sent out a bunch of letters as well. I think we hit everybody, but I already heard from some of the neighbors. Maybe somebody didn't get the letters for the community meeting. But the one that was, I think you're referring to, was a letter from the county as well. Yeah.
Well, now hold on one second. I just want Rocky. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure. We can be with them. Yeah. Again as well. But yeah, we had Christy Smedley go out there and evaluate the stream, so we're comfortable with where the wetlands and streams are on the property. We want to protect those too.
So, Mr. Chambers, help me here. The questions are primarily concerns around the possibility that adding these homes would, increase the likelihood of flooding adjacent properties. That's what I've heard. What are the requirements? I'd like for the folks that are here in opposition, as well as just to make sure that we know you've got a good understanding. What are the requirements of the developer in regards to those concerns? Just baseline requirements.
The county officials here.
You know those as an engineer, right?
So how it's been implemented in the county, and this falls under that jurisdiction, is they really want us to evaluate this stream not only for major 100-year flood events. They want us to evaluate it both, for smaller storms as well. So the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10, 20, and 25-year storm events. They want us to really model the areas and make sure that we don't exceed the pre-development flows leaving the site after we develop. And we do that with a variety of different techniques. And then not only do we have to detain that and make sure that we don't increase flooding downstream of us for those events, they also want us to filter that stormwater as well and make sure that it's cleaner leaving our site than it would otherwise be And so we use a variety of techniques for cleaning the water as well as attenuating the peak flows.
Was there some other stuff you wanted to show us behind you there?
We wanted to make sure we did get this last site plan you have right here in a little bit late. We really appreciate Brian getting that. So we do have that shown, and then also some material that we got from our traffic study. The county engineering department will be looking at that soon. But this basically just showed the capacity of Thrasher Pike versus the impact that we're going to have on it. And we were happy when we got that back because Thrasher Pike has quite a bit of capacity still, and we're going to have, like I say, a fairly minimal impact on it.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman. And she is correct. We sent the letter with the wrong date. We did send, once we realized that, we did send letters back out to all the property owners with the correct date. It went to all the budding property owners.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Payne and then Mr. Holland. Mr. Payne.
Well, maybe it's staff or Rocky, one or two. I just, it's saying that the current use is A1 and R2. Is that correct? How much of the property is R2?
It's the first, 250 feet or so next to Thrasher Pike is R2A.
It's on the screen now. You can see it.
And the rest is zoned A1, which is, like I say, very similar to the use next to us as well.
Mr. Holland.
Thanks, Mr. Chambers. Were you the opposition mentioned that they had hired an engineer. It sounded like you all had met with the community already at least once. Is
that is correct? Yes.
And since then, there was a bit of confusion with the letters going out about this. They've hired an engineer, maybe who can help them interpret what you're saying and how it might impact or not impact the adjacent properties. And curious if you plan on meeting with the adjacent property owners again, at least to help them understand what's happening and what some alternatives may be.
Yeah, the letter we sent out includes our email address, where we can communicate. I've already had some of the neighbors email me. Like I say, our biggest concern is we don't like conversations that, hey, this project doesn't look good, after construction's being done or things like that. And so if we have other engineers that want to look over the documentation, what we're submitting to the county as far as hydrology goes, those are public records as well. So the more eyes on it, the better to make sure that we take care of the downstream neighbors.
Let me clarify what our letter says. The RPA letter advises the opposition of today's meeting date. It also has in that letter a date. If you cannot attend today's meeting, you can send us written comments the Friday before today's meeting. We just had the wrong date of when that was due. Didn't change the date of this meeting. It just said send your comments in by October, I think it was 7th or 8th, which would have been for the October cases. We corrected that and sent it back out. So that date has nothing to do with this planning commission meeting. It was only to send comments if you couldn't attend.
Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Raymond, it's got drawings all over your site plan. I'm just curious, do you have anything to add?
No, I think some of the conversations relative to the design engineer, most of the issues that we deal with are permitting issues, not necessarily zoning issues. So most of the traffic issues, and I'm glad to hear that we've requested some additional information relative to Thrasher, and then obviously whatever issues are related to drainage will have to be dealt with during a permitting phase.
All right. Anything else? Well, we've heard from staff, the opposition, and the applicant. If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion. No, ma'am, you may not. I'm sorry. No, ma'am, the time for opposition has ended. I will say that, okay, well, the time for public comment has ended. But I will say that what we're going to do today is make a recommendation to the county commission. And so there will at the county commission meeting. What's the dates of the county commission meeting?
Let me get my calendar here. There's a handout back there in the back, but it's
And
It'll be
and
the
will.
second Wednesday in December, which is the 14th.
So the 14th of December, it'll be before County Commission. And then in addition to that, we do have time on the tail end of our agenda for public comment on non-agenda items if you'd like to comment on ADA. Well, there's time at the end of our agenda today. Yes. I will ask right at the end of our agenda if there's any public comment on non-agenda items. At that point, you'd have an opportunity. And then on December 18th, 14th at the County Commission meeting.
9:30 in this same room.
With that, what's the will of the commission?
A motion to defer for 30 days for the applicant to meet with the community.
Okay, we have a motion to defer for 30 days. Hearing no second, is there an alternate motion? Or a second? I need one or the other.
Concerns, but there's a different avenue to take care of. With that,
We have a motion to approve. And it has been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That was on case 2022-0241. We also have their residential plan unit development request here in front of us. We are not going to hear from anybody in regards to that. I feel like we've fully vetted both at the same time. And so I would entertain a motion in regards to item 14 on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, staff, I think the applicant wishes to add a condition on this PUD.
Too late. I'm kidding. What condition do you want to add?
I alluded to it earlier, but we want to make sure that what we told the community is true, meaning a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet would be our request to conform with our R1 zoning.
All right. Mr. Payne. Motion, and it has been properly seconded to approve with conditions, case 2022-0242. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, and for those of you who did comment in opposition, what we've just done is make a recommendation to the county commission that both these cases that we have here before us today would be approved. You are welcome to attend and make public comment at the county commission meeting.
That'll be December 14th at 9:30 in the same room.
Thank you for being here. Next item on our agenda is item 15. It's case 2022-0244, and this is located at 6559 Sand Switch Road. And this is an application to rezone from R1 to RTZ residential townhouse zero lot line zone with conditions. Staff has recommended to approve with conditions. And those conditions are that there be one single family detached and or zero lot line single family detached home shall be allowed, and the maximum of 5 dwelling units per acre. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Do you have any questions or concerns with the conditions? You do? Okay. And it's with condition number 2? Okay. Mr. Schultz.
Sure, I'll just go straight to condition if you would like. We recommend 5 dwelling units per acre, primarily from the plan, the Hickson North River plan, which recommends low density residential development. And across the street, sometime this year was rezoned to RTZ. We had a condition on that, condition of 5 dwelling units per acre or less. So that's where we carry that condition over.
Okay.
Just to be consistent with our recommendations.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Jones with Stone Creek Consulting. Address is 1112 Wilmouth Road, Dunlap, Tennessee. To kind of speak on the staff recommendation, well, first I'll just state our request is to keep the 8 units per acre that we're proposing on the site plan. Right now, there's one existing home on the site, and we're looking to add 7 new additional single-family homes to the site. The other case that Brian had mentioned is actually when I rezoned, I guess maybe 6 months ago before this body. And the reason for the lower density on that particular case was because that site, we only had about half the site we could actually utilize because of the topography on that site. So, you know, that applicant, that developer didn't have any issues of accepting that 5 dwelling units per acre. But this site in particular, it's 1 acre in site. It really kind of creates a nice little cul-de-sac, a nice little small development, a little neighborhood here at this on this corner of Sand Switch. And I think with this site plan, you know, you get into the whole density discussion. We're talking, you know, 8 units per acre, 3 units per acre. We're talking 5 homes versus 8 homes. You know, at the end of the day, you know, Tuva is going to have to make the numbers work on this site. You know, her preference is to do, you know, 1,400 to 1,600 square foot homes for these eight homes. If we're limited to 5 units, then we're looking at 2,500 square foot homes. So your price point is going from 350 up to 600,000. You know, in an effort to keep, you know, entry level and income, you know, entry level homes. Careful not to use the word affordable, but you know, entry level homes that folks can obtain. Having a few extra homes on this site will help offset some of those site costs that we're having to put in place. And we did reach out to the community. I mailed out probably 90 letters to the surrounding neighborhood. I had one person email me back just clarifying what we're wanting to do. He thought we could do what we wanted to do with the current zoning, but RTZ just allows us to have a little bit smaller lot frontage as opposed to the 60-foot that's on R1. And then, to my understanding, as of this morning, RPA did not have any comments from the community.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? What's the will of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve based on staff recommendation with condition 1, but not condition 2.
We have a motion to approve with staff recommendation, condition number 1, striking 2. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, item 16 on our agenda, it's case 2022-0245, and this is located at 7503 McDaniel Lane. And it's an application to rezone from A1 to R1 and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive quite a bit of opposition through emails on this.
Okay. And is the applicant present? Okay. Mr. Schultz, can you take us through the staff recommendation?
Yeah, sure. This is case 2022-245, a request to rezone from A1 to R1 for continuation of a single-family subdivision, which is located to the east of this site. It is proposed for single-family residential. This portion is 9.54 acres in size, proposing 41 units. That's a density of 4.2. There is precedent for R1 in the area, which is to the south, north, but not abutting this property. And then to the east of this site's R1, which is a continuation of this development. It is currently a vacant piece of property. Then to the east of this site, where it says under development, that's currently being developed with single-family detached dwellings. To the south is Meadow Stream subdivision, which is a single-family development. And then to the west is vacant land. To the north is single-family detached dwellings. Here's a view of the site. Here's a view of the site looking down McDaniel Lane. You can see on the right-hand side, existing single-family detached subdivision. Just another view of what those look like. This property is located in the Wolf Timber Creek area plan, which was adopted in 2007. That plan recommends low intensity residential, which typically has a threshold in terms of density of 3 dwelling units per acre or less. 5 units per acre is acceptable, but through a PUD. This is not a PUD. This is a typical R1 subdivision. The applicant's proposing a density higher than that. I believe it was 4.2. Again, the plan recommends 3. So the request is compatible with surrounding land uses and development form. It is compatible with land use plan. The density of 4.3 dwelling units per acre is not compatible. So staff recommends a condition. So the development would be more in compliance with the land use plan. So staff recommended approve, subject to a maximum of 3 dwelling units per acre to be in compliance with the land use plan, since this is not a PUD.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? All right. Thank you.
I'll sell you that per acre, whatever that price, whatever those acres are. So I was able to cut out any kind of waste. Typically, a developer comes in, you're stuck with a parcel, whatever that design is or whatever it is, and you got to fit it to that parcel of land or what you have. I was able to do it opposite, where I went in and was able to do the design work and then tell them what I wanted of the land. Thus, it's going to be leaner. The other thing is I kept the development the same as the development prior to, with 7,500 feet per lot. I could have chose to go with 65. If I went to 65, it would be at 5.8 lots per acre under the current, guidelines of R1. I chose to stay with what I already had and keep it current with what I've already been developing in there of 7,500 square foot lots. And in doing so, I kept with the same 10 acres. You're going to have 0.1 more than what I already have. It's virtually the same. So I'm changing from four units or 4 lots per acre to 4.1. I'd like to go ahead and submit under the current plan of what I've submitted with no contingent.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right, we'll hear from the opposition. Mr. Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are the sizes of your lots there? Just
60 by 125.
60 by 125,
which is 7,500 square feet.
Okay.
Now, in the cul-de-sac, they get bigger, per square foot. But I could have went ahead and changed it, but then I would have been different than what I've already got going on there. I could have changed it to 60-foot wide lots and with 6,500 feet per lot.
You mean 50?
Well, yeah, 50. I'm sorry, 50 foot. Yeah, and then doing so change the size of the scope of the houses and everything, which would kind of not do justice to the people in the beginning, because they're going to be more expensive, bigger lots and that type of thing, and then it'd be chopping their legs out from them by doing smaller lots and less expensive houses. So I kept the same of what I'm doing already.
So just to make sure I understand, it is 7,500 square feet.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And quick question for staff: in R1, is it now 5? Is that correct? 5,000?
6,000.
6,000 square feet. And what was the before that was changed? What was it?
It was 7,500.
It was 7,500.
Yes.
So it would be going with R1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the applicant? We'll hear from the opposition first or next, and then you'll have an opportunity to respond.
Hi, Mark Keener. I live on Trout Lily 8366, right behind this property. I guess my biggest concern is the lack of notice that the community received prior to finding this out. If it wasn't for spotting a sign that was posted on that property, which was behind the current development, clearly not even able to be seen from the street, and then following up and calling on it, we wouldn't have known what was taking place. And then when I did call, only after that did I receive any kind of information regarding it, and then I don't think any of the other neighbors had received anything. So I don't think the community was given sufficient time to voice their concerns, although I hear where it seems like we had some response. And then to address further concerns, the traffic, we've already have two developments on McDaniel, the current one that's in progress right now, and one that it just completed. That all the traffic is going to be diverted through the front end of the Meadow Stream subdivision, and then also down Providence. But Providence is not a big street by any means. McDaniel's is not either. And then to divert all the traffic through the front of the subdivision just doesn't seem appropriate. But I think there are many other concerns. I'd like the neighborhood, the community, to be able to have a little more time to address those concerns. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have a bigger turnout here. But based on social media, there was quite a bit of response to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Paula Hayner. I live at 8366 Trout Lily. And the concerns I have are, and I've talked with neighbors, is the traffic on Ottawa Georgetown Road, that when we come out of Meadow Stream and also this subdivision, it's impacting people's lives of them getting to work, getting their children to school. The schools are overcrowded in the area. It's a beautiful area with small little streets going to the interstate, which I have also heard exit 11 from Greg Vital was overcrowded already. That exit is already a problem with safety for the community. And I come from California originally, and I don't want Little Ottawa to turn into an overcrowded California. And I would also like to know if there's a plan. I would love to see a plan for the Ottawa area where we are going to have parks for children and decisions to handle the traffic to the interstate and maybe another off-ramp. I would like to see that. I would know that our community would love to see that. And then when you build homes, I mean, there's thousands that have been approved off of Ottawa Georgetown Road, a 600 home subdivision, one by the interstate. It probably has 500 homes, and they're approved and approved and approved with no regard for our safety, our community.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions for the opposition? All right. Councilwoman Hill.
What year were the homes on Trout Lily Drive built? Okay, so Trout Lily Drive was built in 2020. Okay, so about a year ago. Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
I hate to interrupt, but I think we got the answer to the question. Councilwoman Hill, did you have any other question? I was confused. Who said 2020? Those houses were built? The homeowners. Oh, okay.
I think if you go down towards closer from Trout Lily to McDaniel, those are a little bit older, but going to this section where this development is, they are somewhat newer.
Right.
And just to be clear, that only the homes that abut this parcel would have gotten a letter on Trout Lily.
Right. Mayor Kelly. Ma'am, the time for public comment has ended. Sorry.
Question for staff: the plan for this area, is there how?
It's 2007 with River Creek plan. I'm not sure what stage we are in the process of hiring consultants to do new plans.
Well, I
should look at 2007.
Desperately needed, right? I mean, we need to proceed as quickly as possible with that.
We are very close to selecting a consultant that'll begin working on the county plans next year.
The very neighborhood showing up in opposition has been built in the last 5 years or 10 years. And I think we've seen this time and time again at Planning Commission, where a neighborhood is built and developed. And, we'd love to see people move to our county and be a part of, this beautiful city and county that we live in. And we're so glad that somewhere along the line that neighborhood was approved. I would imagine that if the homes were built in 2020, that neighborhood might have been approved in 2015 or 2014. And we're so glad that it was, because, Chattanooga and Hamilton County have been able to continue to grow and, develop and just be the beautiful place that it is. And then those very people that have moved into that neighborhood that is really, really very new show up in opposition. So that's not an uncommon thing to see. I know it's hard for people to see our county and city change, but with that, I'd entertain a motion. With or without conditions, and how do we want to address the conditions? The applicant had some concern with the conditions that staff had recommended. No conditions, or what he had asked for specifically was 4.1 units per acre as the maximum number of dwelling units. We have a motion to approve with conditions of a maximum of 3 dwelling units per acre. That has been properly seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Maybe.
Kind of quick question for staff how did y'all come to the 3 units? So I guess we have a range between 5 and 3 is kind of where we're at. And how did y'all end up settling?
The plan was adopted 2007, recommends 3. Anything above 3, it had to be a PUD. And on this adjacent property, when this came into the rezoning, it was a rezoning and a PUD, and it had 4-point-some dwelling units per acre, but the PUD was withdrawn at the Planning Commission, and there was no conditions placed on the zoning because the PUD was withdrawn. So that's why we're trying to hold to the plan, even though it is 2007, it's still valid as a recommendation of 3 dwelling units per acre.
Well, I guess and you may not be able to answer this one, but if it was a PUD, would y'all be more comfortable with the added density?
Yeah, based on the plan says you can do up to 5 if part of a PUD. Again, last time the adjacent property was a PUD, but the applicant withdrew that at the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Payne.
Hey, I don't think I'm just if we approve the motion, he can't change to a PUD before the county commission, can he, or can he?
No.
It cannot.
Okay.
Well, I just want to point out that a motion has been made. It has been seconded. I know, and I think I know what your questions might be around. The body hasn't taken any action yet, other than the motion in a second. Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion to approve with conditions that a maximum of 3 dwelling units per acre. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now this will go on before County Commission. What we've done is make a recommendation to County Commission. You'll have an opportunity to, potentially address it with staff in regards to their comments on the fact that possibly if this were a PUD, it would have more flexibility in regards to the number of units. So highly encourage you to connect with staff between now and County Commission and the county commissioners.
Dang it here. No, in the previous case on the screen, if you look at the screen now, everything to the right here, this came in. Yes, that's what he's developing now. That came in with two things: rezoning A1 to R1 and a PUD, and the PUD was higher than 3. The plan supported that. Then at the Planning Commission, the PUD never moved forward. He withdrew the PUD, and he was held to the R1, which had no conditions on the density. The PUD had a condition by the PUD itself. It had the number of restrictions on the number of units because it was a PUD. But when that got withdrawn, he could develop more units there if he wanted to. On the one we're talking about now, the previous one, no, he could not. This on the screen I'm circling. Again, that came in as a PUD, and staff was comfortable with that because the plan said you can go above 3 as long as it's part of a PUD. Then at Planning Commission, the zone got approved and the PUD was withdrawn, so there was no condition on the number of units. I believe if it was a straight zone, staff would have recommended conditions, but because it was a PUD attached to it, restricted the number of units, we were comfortable with that. But when that
Mr. Goodwin, with all due respect, I understand you're frustrated, and I don't even know that I would be any less frustrated if I were in your shoes. But we got to move on with our meeting. So I would encourage you to, between now and County Commission, spend some time with staff trying to figure out exactly why we've done what we've done here today and what you can do moving forward at County Commission. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is we've got, I want to move through these fairly quickly if we might. We've got 10 resolutions to amend a number of different things here.
Sure, I can hit these. I'm going to hit all of them. They're all grouped together, but because they're separate municipalities. 1 through 5 deals with a state law amendment that was adopted in July of this year, basically saying that staff could only approve, prior to July of this year, staff could only approve 2 lots or less. State law changes, we can do 5, but we had to get legislative body approval. We've done that through all these municipalities. They've given us approval to approve 5 lots or less. And this is what this is doing, is amending the subregs to state that. On number 5, that's the town of Walden. since this amendment was put together, I think we're under the impression that the town of Walden has created their own planning commission. So we need to actually defer number 5 and 10. See, till we get some a resolution to where when that planning commission was created and which body needs to approve. So 1 through 5 is dealing with staff approved level plats. 6 through 9 is also a state law amendment. I think we discussed this last month where prior to the state law amendment, the county or city could require additional land dedications through subdivisions along existing roads. State law was amended to say we could no longer do that. If the cities and counties wanted to widen rights of way along existing roads, the county or city had to actually purchase those. You couldn't require it through a dedication of right of way as far as the platting process. And you had to amend the subregs to include those statements. So that's what 6 through 9 does.
Okay.
Yeah. Or we can just drop 5 and 10, not defer if you want to do that.
Yeah, and I just got a procedural question. Obviously, 1 to 5, 1 to 4 is giving us flexibility to do up to 5 lots, or allow staff the ability to do up to 5 lots. So we, as a planning commission, don't see
Correct.
up to 5 lots.
We can always do that. I'm just making it into subregs where it's clear.
And the other one is the 6 through 9 is complying with state law. My question is, don't these usually come to this body, then go to legislative?
No.
Because
we've done
okay.
Number 1 through 5. We did that about 2 months ago, got y'all's approval, and then went to the legislative bodies, received their approval.
And now coming back through.
This is coming back to actually amend
To
the
change.
subregs.
Gotcha. That's where I was unsure of why it was coming to this body after.
This is coming back to actually officially amend the subregs.
Thank you.
All right, on items 5 and 10, I'd entertain a motion to defer.
Motion to defer 30 days.
Actually, we can just delete those or just not
withdraw.
Staff withdraws 5 and 10.
Okay, so we have a motion for staff to be able to withdraw 5 and 10. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On 1 through 4, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion that has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And on items 6 through 9 on our agenda, I've entertained a motion to approve. We have a motion, and I think I heard a second. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have staff updates.
Actually, we have 2 today. One is Eric Asbo to give a quick update on amendment to the City of Chattanooga subdivision regulations in terms of street standards. And then Emily is going to talk about, she's been working on form-based code amendments. We have to do a yearly review of form-based code, and she'll give a quick, brief update on that and bring in an amendment to Planning Commission next month. And both of these items, we're going to have a public hearing on November 28th from 1 to 3 at the DRC. So there'll be another public input session.
Thanks, Brian. Wanted to, all of you should have in front of you two items. One looks like this. This is a kind of brief overview of a presentation that summarizes the changes, and then a red line version of proposed changes to the City of Chattanooga subdivision regulations. More than anything, I'll reiterate what Brian said. On Monday the 28th at the DRC at 1 o'clock, we'll have an in-depth time for public comment. This is the third time that we will have heard from members of the public, as well as some of you, about the proposed changes. We'll have members from planning staff, as well as members of the public works and fire, city fire folks there to be able to discuss the changes. I'll also say that this Friday we'll be posting these and a few other additional materials online. We'll also send that out directly to you and anybody who's expressed interest or participated in the process so far.
Mr. Schultz, are you looking for us to take action on this today?
No, it's the board just give you all updates and get this discussion moving forward. So feel free to look through it. I guess they can send comments to Eric if you have any comments, or the website.
We can, or we also have been accepting comments through RPA at Chattanooga.gov. Either one.
We'll have I guess Eric will have a more in-depth presentation on the 28th.
That's right. And then depending on the feedback that we receive, we'd like to come back in December for a more in-depth presentation here with potential action.
Okay.
Okay, well, Emily, she'll talk about what she's been working on in terms of form-based code amendments.
Thanks, Brian. So, as Brian mentioned earlier, we try to do a yearly review, and we tried to time it this time to get some of the more administrative or quick fixes that we could get finished before we dive into the zoning code rewrite with the consultants. We hosted 2 public meetings. We had a survey online. We worked with the Development Review and Permitting Office and examined the last few years of form-based code modifications to help come up with our staff recommendation. We divided it up into 2 phases that you can see in your report. So the phase 1 are ones that don't require a lot of additional research or public input, whereas the phase 2 was identified that we do see that there may be a need to change, but we don't want to rush that, and we need to give it more thought and more time. And some of those items are removing the neighborhood meeting requirement for applicants prior to submitting an application, adding accessory structure setback and building heights for all accessory structures in residential zones, not just accessory dwelling units, revising the driveway width in some of our commercial and industrial areas to wider driveway widths, looking at the public realm standards for transparency, as well as the fenestration for single family dwellings, moving the signs to chapter 3 with all of the other sign code regulations. And we heard quite a bit from the public about having better definitions of horizontal property regimes and how that relates to the public realm. So for example, if a house was going to front a courtyard instead of a street, how do we address public realm? And so we're cleaning all of that up. And so I'll go into it more detail next month for a presentation with the public, but you have the report in front of you. You can read between now and then. And if you have any questions or comments, we'd be happy to discuss that next month. Thank you.
Emily, I do have one question, and this is not a criticism, but am I understanding this correctly that 600 community members were emailed a survey and 30 responded?
Yes.
Okay, and so then what other opportunities besides the survey have been created? I was looking at some of this at the same time that you were talking, so you might have already mentioned it, but just opportunities.
We hosted 2 public meetings. We had
And what was the attendance of those public meetings?
We had about 30 people.
Probably the same 30 that filled out the
Probably.
survey.
It's a lot of the development community. We had a few from members of the public. Those comments were primarily at the time of day that the form-based code committee meets. They felt was not accessible for people that work, and that there should be more representation on the committee from community members and not just the development community. But aside from that, we had it on our website as well and on our Facebook page, and we really didn't get a ton of input. So I don't
right.
know.
See, I think that's a particularly challenging thing because it's, it seems like a super complex code, and it covers, almost all of downtown and beyond. And, there's certainly been a lot of projects done in form-based code, so I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts in regards to things that need to change. But it seems like the feedback from the public hasn't been that great.
So I will say, as part of the zoning code rewrite, the zoning consultants did mention that for a small form-based code boundary, if you will, we have a lot of zones in form-based code. So that's one thing we have mentioned. It was brought up during the meeting that Emily had with the neighborhood. People mentioned there's too many zones in that form-based code. And we did have some realtors there. Wish there's more turnout, of course, but it was.
Yes, if you have any suggestions on how we can continue to get more public input, we'd be happy to hear that, because we've tried avenues that we generally use, and like you said, we had only 30 respondents. So maybe if we need to delay it longer to get more public input, but yes, that's definitely something. I heard it again at the accessory dwelling unit survey I did a few years ago. I remember Councilwoman Burrs mentioned it too. Like, well, you only had, I don't remember the percentage, but X percentage compared to the whole population of the city. How is this really representative? But I don't know if it's burnout with elections or what's going on, but we just don't always get a ton of input sometimes.
I think what we need is just one case somewhere in the form-based code where staff recommends to go to 20 stories. And then once we have everybody here, we can get their names and phone numbers. And you know,
Can I?
It is frustrating.
We did. I did personally provide this to River City and to the BID and ask them to give it to their board members. I mean, because this is I would say this is a sophisticated code that covers most of downtown, but not all of downtown. And there is some areas that we've talked about expanding it to. I got one in mind that I would like to get council to consider expanding it to. But having said that, I would say there's a lot of things. This is an important part of the city, as all parts of the city are important. But downtown is one of the older, more urban places, and I think we got to get real comfortable going through this code in detail every year, as we've done this year. But there's things in here like parking and other things that honestly weren't even considerations when downtown was started. And we're trying to create a really, we want downtown to be, a real important key part of the city. And I think we just need to get comfortable addressing this code. So having said that, we absolutely want to keep working on this. I was even thinking about, as we were talking about, the original consultant that helped with this, maybe we should consider bringing them back to help. So they are, but Camiros is Code Studio, I think, was the ones that originally did. And I don't know that Camiros works on form-based code specific. This is just a zoning code. It's just a different kind of zoning code that's got, in this case, too many districts probably. And then it has a lot of design requirements. But even so, even if it was just a standard zoning code, it would still be complex. Downtown's going to be an urban place, and so but I think, I don't know that this has been updated radically in 5 years, and it really should.
We've done it every year. About 2 years ago, it's pre-COVID was the last big, if you will, major edits we did to it. But there's things in it. I think we only broke it down phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 we need to address, but it's not going to be a simple fix right now.
One other thing River City is going through right now and looking at, they have consultants that are looking at use of properties in all sorts of ways right now because of the pandemic and what's happened with development in general. And so I think I think this is a great code, but I think we should get comfortable with changing this, where we think there's a need to. So I don't know if saying we're going to go to 20 stories is the answer, but I do believe that until you have real specific, ideas proposed, that folks get, it's hard to respond with specific comments.
What would we be expected to be responding to at some point in the near future?
Next month, I guess if we're comfortable moving it forward, we'll bring an ordinance amendment in front of you guys to make a turning me off to make a recommendation to ultimately go on to city council for their approval.
So when that comes, will that be a multi-page document, right? And it will have, some 20 or 30 changes to the code. I mean, there'll be some really large number of changes to the code.
I think phase 1 probably won't be as much, but she does.
And so will there be, so I know it goes on our agenda and then once it hits our agenda, then there's time for public comment on it.
Sure.
But,
sure.
Do you think after today's meeting, the public knows that these changes are coming on our next agenda?
And that's why we're having the meeting on the 28th as well, to get another opportunity for public input.
Hey, Brian, so there's been a lot of opposition to form-based code. I mean, there's been opposition to form-based code. We have records of people who have been in opposition of form-based code. So maybe we have good records for that. Is it an opportunity to reach out to the people, to folks who may have come before this board or other, or maybe even to your office who had, questions? Because, I don't think we see a lot of opposition until it's in somebody's backyard. And so until the next project is in somebody's backyard, we may not hear from them. But if there's opportunity for people to voice concerns that have already had that occur.
I think in our last, Emily can correct me, I think our last couple of meetings we've had are typical applicants who deal with form-based code on a regular basis.
Right.
So.
And I also sent it to the neighborhood association presidents as well originally. So I know that there's sometimes they can change hands and we may not always have the most accurate people on file, but we got the information from neighborhood services, so they will get a copy as well. But I could pull the minutes and see if I can find the contact information from those cases that you said. If there was opposition, if they provided their information, we could send it to them too.
And I believe, I wasn't there, I believe Sarah Robbins brought these amendments up last week with the Form-Based Code Committee. So I know they're well aware of them. And one of the things we've also talked about, and Dan just mentioned it, I think it's why it's a phase 2, expansion of form-based code. That sounds easy, but then that also leads into unintended consequences. We may need additional staff. Boundaries get large, you're going to need LDO will need more staff and review site plans. So we're trying to include that in our analysis when that comes up of what does that mean in terms of staffing levels.
Well, two things. First, what you prepared today is what is going on. I mean, what I'm asking is we just study it now and be prepared to vote next month, or next month when you submit it, will we have 30 days or 60 days to digest it and then let the stakeholders have some go at it first?
Yes. We're trying to, our goal was to get this knocked out of the way before we get heavily involved in zoning code rewrite in the city. But if we have to delay for a month or two, that's not going to be a big issue.
Then the other thing, I haven't looked in it in depth, but I would, my thing is always affordable housing, and I would like to look at it in terms of what do these decisions do in terms of the affordability of housing? What does it do to density or cost that we're going to incur? Maybe it's none, maybe it's some, but I'd like to, at least the Home Builders Association and some other groups to have a chance to look at it from that.
And I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Doug Fisher did submit a survey probably on behalf of the home builders. So it may be actually more, but he submitted one on behalf of the Home Builders Association.
It seems to me that the whole problem writ large is complexity and the corridor effect, right? Users inside the system think it's too complicated. Consumers outside the system obviously think it's too complicated because they don't understand it well enough to even provide response. I mean, it might as well be, written in Swahili.
And that's why we're.
And so, I'm reminded of that old saying, make everything as simple as possible, but no simpler. And I think we have a hell of a lot of work to do in that regard. So that's the problem.
And I would say again, a couple of things. Pretty sure most of Knoxville's downtown and Nashville's form-based code. So, and the idea of form-based code is that citizens and people are going to care about the appearance of things, the scale. Is it just an ugly blank wall or are there windows? And so the whole idea is that you try to get more of those kinds of features put into a code, and then people are more comfortable with density. Again, I don't know if that totally works that way every time, but that's the theory.
Dan, I think that's exactly right. And look, I think to residents, we can talk about, place types and forms and things like that. And then that has to be sort of backwards engineered into what does that mean in terms of code.
Yeah.
But to put this, in front of rank and file folks, and good luck. I mean, no wonder nobody shows up or provides input, right? So I think most people, inside the system, that's fine.
Well, we're not in a hurry. The idea for me is that we do a good review of this, have a lot of good comments, obviously property owners, others, and that we end up with something that's, good for the city going forward over the next couple of years. So.
And Dan mentioned earlier, there's things, I think Emily did, like the neighborhood meeting. you have to have a neighborhood meeting prior to any development in form-based code. We don't do that in any other areas of the city. Why do it something different form-based code? That's what she's trying to do, is make it match and be under one umbrella of review and permitting, and public notices should also be the same. It's just zoning at the end of the day.
Thank you. Emily, can you email this to us as well? If
I
have
did
it.
this morning.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for your work on it, Mr. Maybe.
Quick comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted to say I agree with the mayor's comments about, I think the primary difficulty with form-based is the complexity of it. I know that when there's been rezonings in my neighborhood when it comes up, and I personally have difficulty trying to decipher it, but did want to mention that, and I believe this was a meeting that Emily hosted, the group of around 30, but there was a good mixture of professionals and neighborhood association people there, and it was I felt like it was the people that would know what to say. A lot of the conversation between staff and engineers was over my head, but you could tell they had the right people in the room to kind of iron out those differences. So appreciate your all's work on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We do have a time on our agenda for public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any? You wanted to make a comment? Come on up to the mic.
I didn't plan to make a comment, but one of the agenda items did catch my attention. That was one on the south side. I think it was 16th Street, the proposed hotel. Sorry, my name is Jeremiah Reynolds. I live in the Ridgedale community. Ridgedale, not Ridgeside. There's a difference. And so when I moved back to Chattanooga, actually just about a decade ago, I moved into the south side area and Fort Negley, in fact, which is a wonderful historic neighborhood of single family, multifamily homes. It has character. It has all the things that people kind of want in a city. And I just wanted to voice that I think it is, as Councilwoman Hill mentioned, kind of regrettable to lose more historic homes in that part of the city. I have still have very fondness for that area of town. I was renting in the south side, and by the time I was in a position to actually buy a home, I was well priced out of that area. It has undergone a lot of change. I'm very familiar with that little stretch of street as well, and I always thought that little stretch is doomed unless somebody decides to do something about it. But it is kind of like a little oddball nook of that neighborhood. I personally think that little oddball nooks make cities interesting. So anyway, maybe nothing we can do about it necessarily, but I just wanted to say as well, I think it's a worthwhile thing to think about, trying to retain those little parts of our history. So thanks so much.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for waiting through that whole meeting to make your comment. Can I get approval of the minutes of October 10th? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And can I get a motion to adjourn? Mr. Payne, thank you.